In your week ahead, Columbia's Board of Education meets tomorrow to vote on when students could return to in-person learning. KMU8's Rachel Behrndt is live outside the district building. And Rachel, what are all the things that the board is considering when making this vote?
Emily, there's lots of data and voices that the board will use to make their decision on how to vote here at the district's administration building. Right now, CPS is in virtual learning and has been since November 16th. The last time the board voted, it extended virtual learning until January 19th. That's next week. But if you look at the COVID case rate, it's still above the threshold that keeps all students virtual. The rate is only one factor, though. The board will also consider information from the health department, and they'll hear from the teachers union and parents. Kathy Steinhoff plans to represent the teachers in the CMNEA at the meeting. She says public pressure on school board members makes her question how the board may vote tomorrow.
But the one thing that I do know is amping up is the pressure that is being put on the board to return to in-seat. So it's just a matter of how much that is going to outweigh their previous opinions on whether we should be virtual or in person.
Another factor is college students returning to town next week. Steinhoff says she expects the board to discuss it, but is not sure how it will affect the vote. Live in Columbia, Rachel Behrndt, KMU8 News.
And as Rachel mentioned, this 14-day average as one factor the board will consider.
Come back next week, MU will begin testing students returning back to campus for COVID-19. If students don't get tested before they return or soon after arrival, they won't be allowed to stay in university housing. KMU8's Rachel Behrndt talked to students who say the new policy helps, but doesn't totally ease their worries going into a new semester.
3,400 MU students living on campus will need to check getting a COVID-19 test off their to-do list this week.
I'm getting mine next Tuesday.
Students say they think the new policy is a step in the right direction.
I do feel safer.
I think it's a good safety measure.
But they're still worried about living in university housing.
So it's still a very real possibility and risk that we face.
MU students will line up here at the Behrndt Center to be tested on campus if they chose not to be tested at home.
Our goal is to turn these around very quickly as possible, so that we can make sure we have all the information and the student gets the information on their test as soon as possible.
MU expects up to 3,000 students to be tested when they arrive to campus. In the meantime, between arrival on campus and receiving a negative test, students will not be isolated from other students unless they're showing possible COVID symptoms. The university says it expects students to continue to comply with guidelines set last semester, but will not change their policy on testing. After the initial test, MU will only test those showing COVID symptoms, a fact that is frustrating to some.
I do believe that I'd feel a lot more confident and safe if there was a mass testing program where every student had access to a regularly scheduled COVID test.
Sure, the virus is gone after 2 weeks, but I just feel like it would be better if there was a second test.
MU says they'll continue testing symptomatic patients to ensure enough tests for those who really need it. In Columbia, Rachel Behrndt, KMU8 News.
Students living off campus and those in Greek housing like a fraternity or sorority house are not required to provide a negative COVID-19 test before they return. MU expects about 6,300 students to be living on campus come spring.
And because of those recent alerts from the FBI, law enforcement in Jefferson City are considering extra safety measures. KMU8's Rachel Behrndt is live at the Capitol with the details. Rachel, what have you learned?
Jordan, behind me there was just a line of Missouri Park Ranger police cars lined up next to where lawmakers enter the Capitol. Today I spoke with a representative from the Missouri Department of Public Safety who told me they were here today assisting Capitol Police. Highway Patrol officers were also here today assisting Capitol Police. Now, officials from both agencies told me this sort of partnership is routine. They also said in the lead up to the inauguration starting Saturday and beyond, there may be increased law enforcement presence here as well as other safety measures like concrete barriers. The Department of Public Safety added that protests and events take place at the Capitol all the time, so police here are used to working with other agencies, just as they did during the protest that we saw take place last Wednesday. In a phone call, the communications director for the Missouri Department of Public Safety told me that he doesn't expect any protests or demonstrations to take place on Inauguration Day. Live in Jefferson City, Rachel Behrndt, KOMU 8 News.